A few summers ago, I walked out to my garden and the damage was bad. Aphids on the tomatoes, cabbage worms working through the brassicas, beetles in places they had no business being. I had tried the usual fixes, sprays, barriers, traps, and nothing was sticking. The pests kept coming back, and by midsummer I was spending more time fighting them than growing anything. That same week, I was reading through the Bible and I came across something that stopped me. In Exodus, during the plagues of Egypt, the text describes in remarkable detail the kinds of pest devastation that wiped out crops across an entire region: locusts, flies, infestations of every kind. And woven throughout those same passages, and others across the Old and New Testament, were plants, herbs, crops, and garden plants that people depended on in everyday life. Seeing those plants mentioned over and over again made me curious. These were not random plants. They were the plants people grew around their homes, used for food, medicine, and daily living for thousands of years. And the more I started reading about those plants, the more I began to notice something interesting. Many of them were aromatic herbs. Many attracted beneficial insects. Many had been grown for centuries in small, mixed gardens rather than large single-crop fields. So, the next season I decided to try a simple experiment in my own garden. Instead of fighting pests with sprays, traps, and constant intervention, I planted several of those traditional herbs around my crops and waited to see what would happen. By midsummer, the results were noticeable enough that I started paying very close attention to what was working. The pests were still there, but they were no longer taking over the garden. The damage was less severe, the plants were healthier, and the garden felt more balanced. I'm going to show you 10 plants that appear in the Bible and that also happen to have a place in the modern garden, not just for cooking or medicine, but for helping protect the plants growing around them. Hyssop is the first plant that caught my attention, and not by accident. It appears in some of the most significant passages in the entire Bible. Exodus 12:22 describes it being used during the Passover. Psalm 51:7 uses it as a symbol of purification. John 19:29 mentions it at the crucifixion. This was not a decorative plant. It was a workhorse herb, valued across centuries and cultures for its powerful aromatic oils. Those same oils are what make it effective in the garden. Planted near cabbage, grapes, or tomatoes, hyssop repels aphids, cabbage worms, and slugs through scent alone. Its volatile compounds create an environment those insects actively avoid. It is a hardy, low-maintenance perennial that tolerates poor soil and drought once established, produces flowers that attract bees and beneficial insects, and earns its space many times over simply by being present at the border of a bed. The next plant on this list is one you probably already have in your kitchen, and it turns out the people of the ancient world valued it for far more than cooking. Mint appears in Matthew 23:23 and Luke 11:42, where Jesus references it being tithed, indicating it was considered a crop of genuine value. In the garden, mint repels ants, mosquitoes, fleas, and cabbage moths with a reliability that few other plants match. The honest warning is that mint spreads aggressively through underground runners and will take over a bed within a season if planted directly in the soil. Grow it in pots sunk into the ground near vulnerable crops. You get the pest-repelling benefit without the invasion. Peppermint tends to be the most potent variety for pest deterrents, though spearmint and common garden mint both work reasonably well. Rue appears in Luke 11:42 alongside mint and cumin, grouped together as plants important enough to tithe. Ruta graveolens is one of the most powerfully scented herbs in cultivation, and that intensity is precisely what makes it useful. The smell is strong enough to repel aphids, flies, beetles, and even cats from areas where it is planted. The honest caveat is that rue's oils can irritate skin, so handle it with gloves and avoid planting it directly next to plants you harvest frequently by hand. Placed at the borders of a bed, it functions as a perimeter deterrent that requires almost no maintenance once established. Garlic is probably the most well-known natural pest repellent on this list, and its roots in the ancient world run deep. Numbers 11-5 records the Israelites specifically lamenting the loss of garlic during their time in the wilderness. It was valued enough that its absence during the Exodus was genuinely mourned. In the garden, garlic repels aphids, spider mites, slugs, and carrot flies through the sulfur compounds it releases both through its roots into the surrounding soil and through its foliage. Planted between roses, near fruit trees, or alongside vegetables, It provides a zone of chemical protection that builds over time. It is one of the most effective and most versatile companion plants available to any gardener. And unlike most of the other plants on this list, it doubles as a significant food crop. So the growing space does double duty from the start. Onion appears in the same verse as garlic, Numbers 11-5, listed among the foods the Israelites missed from Egypt, which tells you how central these alliums were to ancient agriculture. In the garden, onions repel carrot flies, aphids, and beetles, and they work particularly well as companions for carrots, lettuce, and cabbage. The classic pairing of onions and carrots is not just culinary tradition. The onion's scent confuses and deters the carrot fly, while the carrots return the favor by repelling the onion fly. Planted in alternating rows, they protect each other without any additional input from the gardener. Coriander has one of the most striking appearances in all of biblical plant references. Exodus 16:31 describes manna, the miraculous food that sustained the Israelites in the desert, as resembling coriander seed. Numbers 11-7 repeats the comparison. Whatever the theological significance, the agricultural significance is clear. Coriander was common enough and familiar enough that its seed was a shared cultural reference point. In the garden, coriander does its pest control work indirectly rather than through scent alone. Its flowers attract ladybugs, lacewings, and parasitic wasps, beneficial insects that feed on aphids, caterpillars, and whiteflies. Let it flower freely in and around vegetable beds, and it becomes a habitat for the predator insects that do your pest control for you. Allow some plants to bolt and flower rather than harvesting all the leaves, and the garden becomes a more complex and self-regulating ecosystem around it. Mustard appears 3 times in the New Testament, Matthew 13:31, Mark 4:31, and Luke 13:19, each time as the subject of a parable about small beginnings producing significant results. In the garden, mustard lives up to that description in a different way. It functions best as a trap crop planted at the borders of vegetable beds. It attracts flea beetles, aphids, and cabbage pests away from the crops you actually want to protect, concentrating the problem in one place where it can be managed or simply removed. Mustard also suppresses certain soil-borne nematode populations when used as a cover crop and turned in before planting, making it useful both above and below the soil surface. Dill appears in Matthew 23:23 alongside mint and cumin in the same passage about tithed herbs, confirming its value as a cultivated crop in the ancient world. Like coriander, dill earns its place in a pest management garden primarily by attracting beneficial insects. Its umbrella-shaped flower heads are magnets for hoverflies, parasitic wasps, and lacewings, all of which prey on the aphids and caterpillars that damage vegetable crops. Allow dill to flower near tomatoes, cucumbers, and brassicas, and let the insects it attracts do the work. The one thing to note is that dill can inhibit carrot growth when planted too closely, keep them a foot or two apart. Cumin is referenced in Isaiah 28-25 through 27 inches, one of the most agriculturally detailed passages in the Old Testament, where the prophet describes farmers using different tools and methods to harvest different crops and names cumin specifically as a crop, requiring careful handling at harvest. In the garden, cumin attracts beneficial insects with its flowers and appears to have some deterrent effect on certain pest insects through its aromatic compounds. It is less well studied than most of the other plants on this list, and the claims for it should be held proportionally, but as a companion plant that adds biodiversity and flowers to the garden while serving a minor pest deterring role, it earns its place. Thyme rounds out this list. While it does not appear by name in the canonical biblical text, it was widely used across the ancient Middle East and Mediterranean during biblical times as both a culinary and medicinal herb, and its presence in traditional gardens of that era is well documented historically. In the garden, thyme repels whiteflies, cabbage worms, and mosquitoes through its aromatic oils, and it functions particularly well when planted as a border or ground cover between vegetable beds. It is drought tolerant, low maintenance, and produces flowers that attract pollinators throughout the season. Planted at the edge of beds where it can sprawl slightly without competing with taller crops, and it will continue producing pest-deterring oils through the heat of summer when many other herbs slow down. What connects all 10 of these plants is something worth pausing on. These were not decorative herbs. They were not novelties. They were the plants that ancient farmers, people with no access to synthetic pesticides, no garden center on the corner, and no margin for a failed harvest, chose to grow alongside their food crops generation after generation. They survived the selection process of thousands of years of agricultural practice because they worked. Modern horticulture has since confirmed the mechanisms. Aromatic oils that insects actively avoid, flowers that attract the predator insects that control pest populations, root compounds that alter the chemistry of surrounding soil. The ancient world did not have the language of biochemistry, but the observation was the same. These plants make the crops around them harder to damage. The Bible preserved those observations across millennia, embedded in texts that were read and reread by farming communities who took the references seriously because the plants were part of their daily agricultural life. We are not doing something new when we plant hyssop next to our cabbages or tuck garlic between our roses. We are doing something very old and something that still works. You do not need all 10. Start with 2 or 3 that match the pests you are actually dealing with and the crops you are trying to protect. Plant them in and around your beds this season. Let them flower. Let the insects find them. The garden that builds up these layers of botanical defense over a few seasons becomes genuinely harder to damage, not because any single plant is a silver bullet, but because diversity creates complexity, and complexity makes it harder for any single pest population to find the foothold it needs to take over. I walked back into my garden the following season with hyssop along the brassica border, mint in pots near the tomatoes, and garlic tucked between the roses. The difference was real and it was noticeable. Not perfect, nothing in a garden ever is, but meaningfully better. If you want to see how pest management fits into a broader system of traditional gardening, we have a video on the full Mennonite approach to keeping pests out through 6 layers of natural defense. Click on it and we'll see you in the next one.